Well, hello and good evening, and welcome to the library and Friday Night Ghost Stories. Tonight's going to be quite interesting because I did a lot of research and I'm going to focus in on 7 specific stories. So let's get to it and I hope you enjoy it. So let's do the intro. All right. Let's get rid of that. Where are we? What are we doing here? There we go. That's better. Hope everyone's having a wonderful evening. And thank you for joining me tonight. As you can see, my co-host Lenny is in full theme here reading the newspaper. He's actually reading the Italian Tribune. So he's catching up on the Italian news. Not too many ghost stories in there, but once in a while there might be some in there. But tonight's presentation is going to be on stories that were reported in major newspapers like the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune. I thought it was very interesting, and I came about this from last week's story where I specifically spoke about one of the stories being reported in the paper, and I said it was such a detailed account of the ghost encounter that took place in West Virginia in that haunted tunnel. So I thought it was a great concept. Let me look a little bit deeper and find out what's there. And I found quite a few of them actually. And in fact, over the years, there have been over 300 stories reported in the New York Times alone about ghosts. So it's a wealth of stuff out there, and I just narrowed it in on 7 that I could find, and they're the older stuff too, because to me that's more interesting than others. So, Lenny, you can put your paper away now because I need the room here. I need you to move over there so I can get my candles going. All right, Lenny, you'll have to catch up later. All right, let's get the candles going here. And you can just sit back and then listen for once. Put those arms down, sit back and listen. Since you don't contribute much. All right. Let's light our candles. What are we doing? We have to have candles, right? Can't do this without candles. And as Gerard suggested, I should always use a match and not the lighter. There's one. And there's 2. Running out of matches. Shut that light off. There we go. That's the type of mood we need. As my candles start to burn here, hopefully they'll catch. I think they'll catch all right. There we go. All right. So before I get started, let me just quickly say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, Edwin, sir. Good to see you. Delilah, great to see you. Seymour, awesome to see you. Patrick Ortega, Bobo, nice to see you. Gianni is here. Gina is here. Who else is here? There's a bunch of folks here today early. Most people come in later. I'm very impressed today. Sven Larson is here. Cranky is here. Great crowd tonight. That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Paul C is here. Who else? Anyone else that I miss? I don't want to miss anyone. And if I do, I'll catch up with you later on. But I think I caught everybody here. A lot of comments here. Of course, Steg's Spirit is here. Great to see you guys. All right. All right. So now let's start off with our stories in reverse chronological order. So I'm going to do the most recent story first and then go back. All right. So our first story takes place in May 11th, 1913. And it was in the Columbus Daily Inquirer that reported this story. Now, this story is about, it's interesting. It's in the Columbus Daily Inquirer, but it's about an Atlantic City story, Atlantic City, New Jersey. It's about a home in Atlantic City that it says, and it says to be haunted by a girl by the name of Jane Addams, who was murdered. And she's haunting her own house. She had lived in this house. But the article talks about the background to the murder and also tells about how it's her parents that the ghost is haunting, and the parents are looking for help in how to get rid of the ghost of their daughter. So the background to this is Jane Addams was murdered in 1910 in Atlantic City. She was thrown off the $1 Million Pier one night. And the background to the story is that she was out with her sister and her sister's boyfriend. And in the course of that, her sister's boyfriend's brother joined them. And at one point in the night, the two couples split off. And she ends up dead. She ends up off the pier and drowned in the water, drowned in the ocean. And there was an actual trial about this because they accused the brother, William Slyler was the brother of this that was with her. They accused him of murder, but there was insufficient evidence to convict him. He swore up and down that it was an accident, that she fell off the pier, that he was there and she fell off the pier. But many did not believe this. The parents did not believe this. Many who read the story originally didn't believe it, and they assumed that he was the murderer, that he pushed her off the pier and killed her after they had an argument, because he did admit that they had an argument. So a terrible story, a terrible tragic story of the time. She was only 18 years old. But it turns out that her ghost comes back to haunt her house. And the news article tells us that her sister is the one, Mary Addams is the one who encounters the ghost the most often, that she saw a ghostly hand protruding from her closet in her bedroom with no body, just a hand coming out of the closet door, through the closet door. And that she hears that's the article, queer noises every night, and actually even observed the spirit of her sister coming out of the closet and roaming the halls of their home. So the article, speaks to this and asks, and the family is asking for anyone who can help them rid or purify the house of the ghost. That's the end of it. That's the tale. And I was unable to find any follow-up, anything, as a result. Did anything else happen? But this was reported as actual news in the Columbus Daily Inquirer on May 11th, 1913. So that's our first short story of a ghost in the paper. Now let's go on to the next one. The next one is in the New York Times, one of the most famous newspapers around. This was April 3rd, 1909. And it was a story out of San Diego, California. Now let me see if I can share my screen on this one. Let me see. What is this? Here it is. Oh no, that's the last one. I'm sorry. That's what I'm showing you right here is the article from the last story, and it's entitled "Say A Haunting by Ghost of Murdered Girl," and this is what the article itself looked like. So that was the article of the last story. So let me get out of that. I was sorry about that. I neglected to say that one to show you that one before. All right, let's get out of here. Stop sharing that. Now let me see if I can this other thing. No, I don't think I can show you this other article. All right. All right. Anyway. Well, this is the article. It's a very short article. It appeared on the April 3rd, 1909 article, and it's entitled Mirage of Castle Seen Off Coast. And it says on April 2nd, off the Point Loma in San Diego, a vast castle rising off the Coronado Islands was viewed in the distance on the ocean, and it remained visible for several minutes, then disappeared in a cloud of mist. The mist vanished, and a large city appeared afterwards, and that lasted for a few minutes as well until that vanished. And it says many witnesses. Okay, it was witnessed. I'm sorry. It was witnessed by a considerable number of tourists who were visiting the Point Loma lighthouse. So you had a touring party of tourists going to the lighthouse who claim that they saw this ghost castle show up over the horizon in the water off of San Diego. And after that, it vanished as quickly as it came. So you have a ghost type of building castle that's replaced by a view of a city out on the ocean, and it was accounted for by multiple people that saw this at that time on April 2nd. I'm sorry, 1909. So much so that it was picked up on the Associated Press, and it appears as a little article in the New York Times. So quite interesting story. Nothing else out there but this little story, little tidbit that was in the paper on that day. Hello, Patrick. Good to see you. I don't think I said hello to you before. Maybe I did, but I hope I did. Dean Do, my brother. Thank you so much. Unnecessary, but thank you so much. You're the best. That's awesome. That's awesome. You're so kind. And generous. Thank you. And by the way, guys, hit the like button if you can. That would be helpful too for me. So I appreciate that. So that's number 2. Well, that was number 2, right? Let's go on to number 3. Number 3 story here. This one is out of Kalamazoo Gazette, the Kalamazoo Gazette in Michigan. Now, this one's kind of weird. This is about a ghost farm. August 24th, 1902. And this one, I think I have an article. I can have a picture of the article for you. So let me put this up. Picture of the article. Where it is. There it is. Okay. It's entitled Spirits, Elements, and Neighbors Turn on Man Who Farms a Cemetery. Now, this is so bizarre. This story is so bizarre. But let me get that out of here. I just want you to see what the article looked like. How do we get out of here? There we go. So there's an individual by the name of George Flowers, and he buys this property in Michigan. He buys a large property in a rural area to farm. And part of the property includes a cemetery of the local cemetery for the town in which the farm is located in. And that farm contained over 300 tombstones, believe it or not. That's a lot of tombstones, especially for a small farming area, right? So there must have been people from around the surrounding area that came in and were buried there. So Mr. Flowers is not the coolest cat around. He's not somebody you'd like to hang out with. Is my take on it, because what he does, instead of relocating the people in the cemetery, the bodies, the remains of those 300 people, he removes all 300 of the tombstones, throws some of them in a river, and uses other tombstones to build the remaining tombstones to build the foundation of his house that he builds right on top of the graves. So he builds his farmhouse, his barn, and everything on top of the area of the cemetery. In addition, he also plows most of the cemetery to plant uh, uh, melons and what else? Melons and something else he cooks there. He plants there melons and potatoes, melons and potatoes. Well, he plants the entire property of melons and potatoes. That's his main story, his main thing there. This is not a good idea because the spirits of those who were resting there become disturbed by this now, and nothing but bad fortune happens to this guy. Uh, First off, the let's see. The first thing that happens is all the plants that he planted suddenly die and are eaten by a strange bug that they've never seen before, that they couldn't identify. This bug appeared out of nowhere in kind of a swarm and ate up all of the melon and tomato plants that were on the ground specifically for the cemetery. It didn't go to the other grounds of the farm and eat those, but only that area. It ate and just destroyed the crop that was on the grounds that was the people were buried under. After a while, the house that he built starts to shake periodically, and it's a unique occurrence because there's no earthquakes around. There's no accounts of anyone else in the area experiencing any type of um, seismic activity, but the house itself begins to shake periodically. To the point that it almost feels like it's going to collapse. And this got so bad that his wife and children left and fled the farm. They couldn't take it any longer. This is all in the article, and the icing on the cake is there's a lightning strike out of nowhere that hits his barn, sets his barn on fire, wipes out the barn, and kills all of his livestock that are in the barn. And the article ends by saying the father seems to be compelled to is impelled by some irresistible force to visit the haunted farm daily, only to flee with increasing fear each day. So basically, he goes back every day and can't take what's going on there and runs for his life every time. So this is the George Flowers farm out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, and he really got what was coming to him. This guy for desecrating the grounds of those who passed, the remains of those who passed, and here's the icing on the cake is that this guy was such a winner that not only were there of those 300 people souls that were buried there, one of them was his brother, one of them was his sister, and two of them were children that he had lost, and he still plowed over their graves. He was a real winner, this George Flowers, but he got what he deserved, obviously, and from a little activity from the other side. So that's our third story, the ghost farm of Kalamazoo. All right, now let's move on to our fourth story from the Chicago Tribune, July 18th, 1889. And the article is entitled Gang of Ghosts. I don't think I have this article. I don't have a picture of it. I looked for a picture of it, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, so anyway, this one is the Gang of Ghosts. It's called, and the story goes that the Rowe family, ROWE, Rowe family household on the north side. They lived at 349. I'm sorry, 394 Belden Ave. It's a two-story building. And the Rowe family was suddenly out of nowhere haunted by a gang of ghosts. And what they mean by a gang of ghosts is that the ghosts were acting like they were a gang, like a criminal gang, in the sense that they were awoken one night by yelling, fighting, and pistols shooting off. The sound of pistols shooting off. And the family runs downstairs to see what's going on, to find nothing disturbed, nothing, just the sounds of people. There was the sounds of fighting, people fighting, yelling, and people falling down the stairs, and a gunshot. So this woke them up, and the owner of this house was actually a doctor, Dr. W.C. Rowe, who was a physician and also a local church deacon. So, not the guy that would be making up stories. His wife was and children, 5 children, lived there with him. And like I said, the first night they were awoken by that. Now, this continues for about a month's time, and they the ghostly sounds of a gang of people roaming the halls, moving parlor chairs, lighting matches just lighting on their own, and shaking of doors shaking. And it's this was reported in the Chicago Tribune in this on July 18th, 1889. The day after, there was a report in another Chicago publication by the name of the Intern Ocean, the Chicago Intern Ocean. It was another rival paper, I guess a smaller one. And that one reported that as a result of the Chicago Tribune's article, 1,000 people showed up at the house the next day to watch and see if they could see what was going on in this house the first day. On the second day, that 1,000 swelled to 5,000 people. So this was a major attraction for 1889 in the streets of Chicago, that this article appeared about these delinquent, yes, Gianna, delinquent ghosts that were causing havoc in this poor deacon's house. So that's number 4, our gang of ghosts. All right. Reported in the Chicago Tribune. Now, number 5, we're going to go back to the New York Times. Now, this one is about ghosts in Brooklyn. And this one was reported on December 20th, 1878 in the New York Times. And this is about a house at 136 Clinton Avenue. And the owners of this house reported a week of strange sounds in the night. So much that they investigated it every night to the point that they couldn't figure out what was going on. That the doorbell would constantly ring throughout the night, that the doors would rattle. The doors would rattle in the front, and the back of the house. The doors would rattle. Violent banging on the back door. And the family that lived there was so bent on trying to figure out what was going on that they actually got friends and family to come and stay with them to experience this overnight and try to figure out what's going on. And they stationed people in all over the house, all outside the house, to try to figure out what was going on. And this still continued, and they couldn't pinpoint what was causing this. The original thought was that people were playing a trick on them, that, maybe it was kids playing ding dong ditch, and that type of stuff. And it got so bad that they actually called the police and asked the police for help. Well, the police, and it was, the local police captain and a detective come to the house, and it said that they were utterly unable to fathom what they saw. That's what the article says. They were utterly unable to fathom what they saw in that house happening. And they retreated and came back the next day with many more police officers. And these police officers mimicked what the family had done the couple of nights before. They put officers stationed at all different parts of the house and on the outside of the house too, to try to figure out who was causing this havoc. And it's during the course of this police occupation of the house, for lack of a better word or phrase, that everything starts happening again. And not only that, a brick is thrown through the dining room window. And where the brick came from, there was a police officer stationed right there in the yard, right there. So it couldn't have been anyone else that had done it. It couldn't have been a kid. It couldn't have been a neighbor. The police officers were right there and just didn't see anything. They were either looking away or what have you. But then suddenly the brick hits the wall and all hell breaks loose. So this was the ghost. This was Ghosts of Brooklyn in the New York Times, 12/20, 1878. The house was owned by someone by the name of Mr. Thomas, and the article ends by pleading for anyone who has any information about this to please contact the police. I saw nothing after that at all. Nothing, no additional articles or follow-ups about it, but it was big enough to cause this stir where the police were involved, and it was reported fully in the New York Times. So interesting number 5 story there. The Ghosts of Brooklyn. All right. Oh, that was weird. Anyway. All right. Number 6. Again, the New York Times. Now we're going back to April 9th, 1874. This is even later, even older. And this one's entitled Ghost in Maryland Courtroom. Now, this is intriguing, right? A ghost in the courtroom. Well, the background to this story is that it's probate court. So when someone dies and they dispute the will, they go to probate court to figure out who's getting what from the estate. Well, this gentleman passed away, and it turns out there were 3 wills that were put forward as the actual will of this gentleman. And all 3 were fraudulent. All 3 of them no one could identify the signatures on them as the deceased. So there's an actual case, court battle here. And it turns out that the brother of the deceased was doing his best to try to get all the money from the estate and leave his brother's wife a penniless widow. So we have the villain of this story, which is the brother. And they're going through this trial. Now, suddenly, in the midst of this trial, there appears someone in court by the name of Kite Stenso. Weird name, Kite Stenso, but he's an 18-year-old boy. He's an 18-year-old kid. And he appears in court, and he says that he had a dream, and he was visited by the deceased in that dream, and that the dream told him where to find the will. And he knows that this is true because when he woke up, in the dream, the deceased was shaking his neck, shaking his neckerchief, shaking his neckerchief to show him how passionate he was, that he needed him to find the actual will, and he was going to tell him where the actual will was. And when he woke up, there was a burnt handprint on his handkerchief, on his neckerchief, I guess is what it's called. Hey, Todd Father, how are you? Thanks for joining. And the article says that the neckerchief was submitted into evidence as proof that this occurred, that there was a ghostly encounter. So he gets on the stand to give his testimony as to where he found the will and all that stuff. And in the course of this, the brother who's contesting the will is sitting there, and on one side, the widow is sitting on the other side, and the witness, Kite Stenso, suddenly stands up and points to the brother and says, there is the deceased behind the brother, and he's sitting there, and he's frowning, and he's looking this very, very angry at you. But he says this, and as he says this, the brother suddenly passes out and faints. So the end result is that the court believes the ghost encounter because the ghost appeared in the court itself. to basically authenticate the will, and it rules in favor of the widow for the found will that this bystander who had this encounter came forward and presented. So that's the ghost in the probate court will story that was in the New York Times on April 9th, 1874. And it was a Maryland court. It was a story out of Maryland, but it was reported in the New York Times. So even if you try to screw with the dead, they may come back, and make sure you don't get away with it, as the brother learned on that day. So that's number 6. And now the final story, our final, and number 7, our final story. This one is out of Wilmington, Delaware. The paper was called the Wilmingtonian and Delaware Advertiser was the name of the paper. And this is going way back. This is June 28th, 1827. And in this article, it's an account of a man who was hired to watch a ship while it was in port. The ship was vacant in port, and at the time, what they would do is, if the ship was big enough or what have you, they would hire someone to stay on the ship to make sure things aren't stolen, things aren't looted while it's in port and it's not being used. Make sure it's kept up, kind of like a caretaker for the ship itself. And the ship was called the Marvel. The Marvel. Now, the stir behind the Marvel was that the Marvel was haunted. And the stir behind it comes from the fact that one of the mates who was on the previous voyage hanged himself in his cabin and ended up dead. So one of the mates killed themselves in the cabin, and as a result, many people on the wouldn't work on that ship anymore. They kind of fled and said they weren't going to deal with this anymore. They were really afraid of the ghost and wouldn't work on the ship anymore. So as a result of that, they had to dock the ship for a while they gained a new crew and etc. And this individual was hired to sit there. So what he does is he moves into the cabin's quarters, and he's living there and he's taking care of the ship. Well, in the course of him living there, and the first week is okay. And the second week, he starts to hear footsteps walking between decks. So he investigates this, thinking possibly someone is intruding, someone's coming in, trying to steal, or, what have you. Investigates it, finds nothing at all. The third week, he hears the gliding sound and rustling across the decks from room to room. He hears this at night while he's sleeping. He wakes up and quickly runs to try to figure out what's going on. He sees nothing. On the fourth week, it becomes a little bit more personal for him. In fact, in the middle of the night, he wakes up feeling like an ice cold hand is over his face and neck, holding him down. Wakes up in a panic and doesn't know what's going on, but there's nothing there. When he wakes up, there's nothing there. So this happens repeatedly now. This is happening every night. He's getting this ghostly hand or this cold feeling of an appendage on him. And he begins to stay up. He figures he's going to stay up and figure this out. He's going to change his sleeping habits. He's going to stay up. He's going to sleep during the day, and he's going to stay up at night. So he does this, and he stays up until midnight. And what happens is he falls asleep again. He just can't do it. He falls asleep again. And this time he's woken up in a sleep by a noise. He hears like a crashing noise. And it jars him from his sleep. It jars him, and he wakes up. And it's pitch black, and he's in complete darkness. So, but he feels again. Now he's awake, though, and he feels the cold touch again happening to him. So he quickly jumps to the side of his bed, jumps up, doesn't get out of the bed, but jumps up, goes to get a lantern that's next to him. Remember, this is 1827. There are no lights. It's just candles and lanterns. He gets a lantern and he lights it, and he begins to shine it around his quarters to see if there's anything there, if anything's happening. And what he sees shocks him. In fact, what he didn't see a ghost and he didn't see an intruder, but what he described was that there was a tall, dark serpent creature standing there at his bedside, that it had it had eyes that were glowing in its head, and it was frightfully, he describes it as being frightfully appalling. It had a large open mouth with fangs, and a slithering tongue that was slithering out like this, and that and that there were additional eyes on its body, which is really creepy. Addition to the glowing eyes, it had additional eyes on its body. But it's a serpent-like thing, and he described it as, he thought it was Lucifer himself. He thought it was some type of some type of demon that was there. So in a panic, what he does, he's very afraid that this thing is going to come at him. So he takes his lantern and he throws his lantern at the creature, and the lantern hits the ground, explodes. The fire goes up, and it doesn't burn the place. It doesn't start a fire, because he gets up quickly and puts it out. But it went right through the the monster, the creature, and the creature dissipated and vanished with the lantern being thrown at it. So it's and this was reported as a factual event in the Wilmington, Delaware Advertiser, and with the caveat that it is being forewarned that people should look out for this creature that has been seen on the docks in the area that way. So it's not exactly a ghost; it could be a demon, but it's still an actual firsthand account reported by the paper on June 28th, 1827, of this ghostly serpent, demon, or whatever it might be, that appeared on the Marvel, the haunted ship, the Marvel. So that's our seven ghost stories that were reported in newspapers, credible newspapers, not tabloids, credible newspapers over the years. And like I said, there's a lot more out there. I just picked a few. I picked 7 that I could find. 300 alone in the New York Times, which is, to me, is baffling. But it's been out there. It's been out there for a while, I guess. People thinking and writing stories about ghosts in newspapers. So those are our stories for this evening. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it. How's everyone doing this evening? I hope everyone is doing well. We've had some nice weather today. A nice summer day. It wasn't too hot. It was nice and cool. Thank you, Gianni. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate your support and your positive feedback always. So, yeah, so that's what's happening. I don't know what's happening with you guys, but I am looking forward to this weather while it lasts, because I know that it's going to get hot again. It can't just go away. It's going to be hot again. All right, so Gianni says there was a ghost that made the news in his city somewhat recently, about 10 years ago. They photographed it at the old jail on Columbus before they knocked it down. Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll have to look it up. You think it's online? I'll look it up. I'll look for it. Hey, Slim. Nice to see you, buddy. And Slim, I think are you going live after this? If so, we will all go over and visit you. So usually you go live at about 10. So I would encourage everybody to go check out Slim at 10. But because I'm going to wrap up soon. This was quicker than it usually is, because I couldn't have the pictures. I couldn't find the pictures. The New York Times, you got to pay for everything, so I didn't feel like paying for it. But it would have been nice to get the pictures of all those New York Times articles, but couldn't do it. Okay, so Gianni says it might be online. It's probably on YouTube. Okay, I'll have to look for that and see what it's about. The ghost in Columbus, the jail on Columbus. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down, because I'm gonna check that out. I love those photographs. I love those photographs. I couldn't find any photographs for these. They were so old. There were no photographs of them anywhere to be found. But Columbus Ave. Okay. So yeah, that's what's going on here. I don't know what else is going on with you folks. I hope you guys are enjoying. I don't know if you guys are seeing my Bible posts. I hope you enjoy them. They are provisions of the Bible that I think are impactful. That's how I choose them. Things that I think are worth putting out there. So that's what I've been putting up in my shorts lately. Springfield, Mass. Got it. Okay. Okay, so Slim's channel. Thank you, Gina, for posting that. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have an actual thumbnail up yet, but that's his channel. So check him out. All right, guys. Well, if there's nothing else tonight, I think I'm going to close her down early, a little bit early today. Lenny's tired. He needs to get back to his paper. And we'll look forward to the next one. But as always, I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping in, spending some time with me, listening to my tales. If you like them, if you like it, press the like button, share me out, tell your friends, whatever. I'd appreciate it. We're just trying to grow the channel, as always, build the guild. And again, if anyone wants to ever come on and tell a personal ghost story, a personal encounter, this is your avenue to do so. I'd be happy to let you on. I am, as long as we know you're a real person and not a troll. We're not going to fall for that, but a real person is more than welcome to come on. We've had this before. More than welcome to do it again. And I think it adds to the show. So I want to thank you each and all, and have a wonderful week. Tune into Slim next. Tune into Stiggs tomorrow morning. And God bless. Have a good one. Build the guild. Stay scared. Let's blow out the candles, as always, as part of the process. There's one. Wait a minute. Where's my thing here? I can't find my thing. There it is. All right. There's my cursor. I just found it. Okay. And there's two. Have a good night, everyone.